Welcome back, everyone, to the south. So, let's see what happens this time. Anyway, we're about to get a bunch of rifles. The peasants request financial aid. The province of Guangdong has not been spared from the consequences of Black Monday. Regardless of how a failed coup in Beijing... What the fuck?! Looks like they tried the Manchu coup. Deal with unrest. Who has not intervened in the League collapse? Okay. So... yeah, they probably get the lessons of the coup attempt. Okay. The coup to overthrow the Zhili clique has failed. Interesting. So they're gonna make the Beiyang Republic 2.0. Interesting. Let's see how this continues. He's actually got a war goal on Shanxi clique. Did Yanxi Shan fucking help in the Beijing Manchu restoration coup? And is about to get shafted because he actually begins with like no divisions. So if the Zhili declare war right now, they can retake Shanxi. Although to be fair, Shanxi without, like, you know, the glorious Yanxi Shan fought development is pretty worthless, but whatever. Regardless of how much how unwanted German influence is. Oh Jesus! Oh Jesus! Okay, so that's having a lot of fallout. That is having some fallout indeed. Anyway, so basically, help the peasants. The financial situation of the province may make such a program impossible to implement in finance. That's only 10% for consumer goods for 30 days. I don't think that this. It actually helped the Landowners Association somehow. Annoying. Anyway, the officers' department seek asylum. After years of resistance, the civil war in Citron has proved to be the officers' last chance to achieve power. The victorious industrial corps has now turned their eyes to the south of the province, launching a military campaign to destroy the officer department, and with it the last shreds of republicanism in Citron. Despite heavy resistance, the movement has been crushed and their leaders scattered until now. The few remaining leaders of the department have arrived in Liangguang, asking to serve in our armed forces with perhaps the hope of one day returning home. Now, I don't think the industrial corps would in any way support our federalism. So the true Republicans are welcome in Liangguang. We shall get some officers from that. It's gonna tell me which officers. Ooh, Liu Bocheng. Interesting, Guangdong clique. This guy is pretty important in real life. Very, very important, in fact. And in fact, like, he's much better than Chen Jiuming at being a field marshal, so... here you go. Go, Liu. Go. We could get the aggressive assaulter. Yes. Yes, indeed. Anyway, the Baoding department. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look like we actually got them yet. Probably it's gonna, like, pass through an event. It actually tells you, that they are Citron clique officers by a trait. Anyway, the Baoding department seeks asylum. With Liu Xiang's victory in Citron, the situation has been drastically altered. Following their losing struggle against the industrial corps, the leaders of the Baoding department of Citron were forced into exile by the military advances of Liu Xiang. They've now arrived in our capital and asked to be allowed to serve in our armed forces, perhaps one day defeating the usurper to force them out. Oh, you gain Guangdong clique officer. Okay, so actually they gain Guangdong clique officer. So, ooh, Ye Jie. Oh, so that's probably Liu Bocheng is probably from the Citron clique. There's also Ye Jianying, who in real life ends up like being incredibly important in the CCP, especially in the Cultural Revolution. Actually, was pretty cool. Yeah, like Xiong Kewu is from the officers department as well. All right, I see. Lu Chao, Cai Tingkai. He's a Guangdong guy. Anyway, wait, why do we have Jiang Guang? Oh, he's also got the infantry officer. See, because we have Lu Yuguang. Oh, but he's from the Guangxi clique, right? And not from the Guangdong clique. Anyway, we have no need of addicted warlords. Addicted warlords. The reason why that's probably the choice is that, you know, we are also sheltering the officers department, which are pretty opposed, and also the Baoding department are allies to the Zhili clique. So really don't know why we would get that offer, because they're not good people. They're warlords. And there we go. Shanxi clique is being invaded. Merchant bailouts. Similar to the peasant crisis last month, a number of wealthy merchants have hit numerous financial difficulties caused by the global economic crisis. A number of members of the provincial assembly, with ties to the merchant class of the cities and towns, have made the case that the provincial government should intervene and keep these merchants from economic ruin. The influence of the merchants in Guangdong is significant, and their continued political support is necessary, but such a bailout would of course be costly. We could bail them out, because we really don't want to lose the stability that we have. It's unfortunate that we're going to get social liberalism from it, but it must be done. Suppressing illegal gambling. Ever since entering politics in the years before the Xinhai Revolution, Chen Jiuming has been fighting with an arduous battle against gambling in the province, a problem plaguing the province along with opium addiction. In the 1920s, he managed to have it completely banned. Just as banning the trade and consumption of opium, however, enforcing this ban has been a difficult task and removed an important source of revenue for the government. The provincial assembly recently began debating its effectiveness, with a faction pushing for loosening anti-gambling laws. The governor is adamant that this would lead to a return to moral degeneracy in Guangdong, blah blah blah. So basically, the whole idea here is that some of the social evils, quote unquote, that became much more widespread in the collapse of the Qing in the later stages of the 19th century and in the beginning of the 20th century, which were also like heavily fed upon by the sort of climate of the warlord era, are not really well seen by a lot of intellectual circles and a lot of nationalist type politicians. Also populist politicians are against, for example, opium and gambling here are quoted, and they're like, mostly it's about the opium, but also about the gambling. Like in real life today in China, the gambling is forbidden as well, except in one place, which is Macau, the Portuguese colony, and the former Portuguese colony, now special administrative region. And in fact, Macau is like really ridiculously per capita rich, to a point where like the Macau government can just kind of hand out cash like willy-nilly, because Macau's full of fucking casinos and they're getting a bunch of money from it. So the ban on gambling remains, or anti-gambling is loosened? No, the ban on gambling remains. Famine in the north. While news of a famine in the province of Citron have already reached Guangzhou before them, an official delegation from the troubled province arrived today. After speaking with Governor General Chen Jiuming, they have pleaded before the provincial assembly for support. Their moving words are showing desperation, coupled with disturbing photographic evidence, and it made it feel far more real to the assemblymen than the newspaper headlines could ever convey. Disorganized and emotional discussions were quickly cut short by the radio. Were quickly cut short by the assembly president bringing back order. An elected legislature ought to act like one. The matter will be thoroughly discussed before a vote will be held. At the very least, it was clear that the people of Guangdong understood the gravity of the situation of their countrymen further north. Bring in a vote for the assembly. So obviously in Citron we have a bit of an opium crisis, which leads to famine, along with bad weather conditions. Relief vote begins. Hopefully they'll do the right thing. And yeah, we're kind of wanting to. Chen Lianbo pressures the assembly. Huh. So Chen Yanbo of the Guangzhou Chamber of Commerce, head of the Merchant Corps, spoke to the Provincial Assembly about the Citron famine. The wealthy Cantonese businessman, fond of philanthropy, was highly critical of the skepticism of many assemblymen and made it very clear that the Provincial Assembly wouldn't act, that he certainly would, and would publicly denounce every single member of the Provincial Assembly that voted against the relief. Okay. Labor dispute. Guangdong province has proven itself to be one of the most progressive in terms of labor issues. This is true in real life as well, but mostly because of the KMT. The KMT presence, like, for example, the first sort of national congresses of different trade unions, because, like, okay, we're kind of used in the West of having, like, federations of trade unions that sort of group together a bunch of different singular trade unions by category, right? And they're all federated together into one big thing. Like, obviously in Kaiserreich, this is the whole basis of syndicalism, with, in the Commune of France, the CGT being sort of the ruling body in a way, and the CGT is the Confédération Générale du Travail, or whatever the fuck the pronunciation, which sort of groups together a bunch of trade unions, the General Confederation of Labor. In China, this was only beginning in the 1920s, obviously because of the whole, you know, there wasn't any capitalism before that, so there were no trade unions. And the first congresses were held generally in Canton because it was the only place where they could meet sort of freely, because everywhere else trade unions were banned. But again, this was kind of a KMT thing. I'm not 100% on what Chen Jiongming would have sort of had as a stance on the issue. Because back in the day, trade unions in China, well, back in the day, obviously, at this moment in time, trade unions in China, exactly because of the whole economic situation not really being all that developed, they were pretty much political weapons, as well as sort of collective bargaining tools. Like, there was a pro-KMT federation of trade unions, and there was a pro-CCP sort of federation of trade unions, which later, evolves. But anyway, unionization has been encouraged since the early 1920s, and one of the largest of these is the Union of Machinery Workers, and their strike in 1921 being one of the more well-known acts in recent memory. It appears that another labor dispute is imminent, and the machinery workers are threatening to go on strike once more. The provincial governor under Chen Jiongming has been presenting itself as a mediator for dispute between the workers and businessmen, which has been largely successful thus far, as the governor maintained a reasonable approach to solve these issues peacefully and through compromise. Yeah, okay. So basically the machinery workers were more known for being pro-KMT, while, for example, the dock workers were a lot more pro-CCP. But anyway, the settlement slightly favors the workers, is going to gain a social democracy and syndicalism, while the compromise slightly favors the merchants, is also going to lose a stability. I feel like we shouldn't really lose too much popularity for, like, the Grand Republican League. So anything that's going to give us social liberalism is good. Although this might destabilize the province and perhaps sort of strengthen the Guangdong in the long term, but whatever. That is fine. We're also social democratic, though. I don't know, it's weird. Pressure the assembly. So it seems that the Provisional Assembly is far less united than the relief fund of Citron than hoped. After all, it was clear that any relief to the province may never reach the starving people, and it would be yet another expense to the provincial government's fragile budget. Yet Chen Jiongming believed that despite the cost, it was not only the right thing to do, that it would put Guangdong in a good light and help the province's reputation throughout China. Of course, Chen also deeply believes in democracy and must act within the law. While he could add further pressure to the provincial assembly, his intervention could backfire and open himself to public criticism or set a dangerous precedent for future governors. Either it's the right thing to do or don't interfere with the process. It's the right thing to do. Now, Chen Jiongming, the reason why we're talking about democracy so much and the provincial assembly so much is that Chen Jiongming is pretty much the only one of the Republican period warlords, and the votes, yes. Okay. Maybe it would have been different if we had, you know, pushed for, or if we hadn't pushed for yes. So basically, Chen Jiuming is like the only warlord in the early Republican China. Well, yeah, pretty much the only warlord in general in the history of Republican China that was, in a way, maybe not really democratically elected, because I don't really remember like how the census worked, but you know, elected through a legitimate political process to be a provincial leader. The provincial assembly that it's talking about was originally established in the waning days of the Qing, essentially when it was clear that the state could not keep control of all the provinces and it was sort of collapsing in on itself. And these provisional assemblies were elected by, again, some kind of, I think, like, basically weighed in favor. Hami? What the fuck? Anyway, it was some kind of, like, if I recall correctly, like, limited suffrage voting, where like obviously you could only vote if you had a certain amount of land, a certain amount of sort of wealth, maybe like bank accounts, I don't know. It was basically like in early Victorian England where there were elections. It was just, you know, only the rich people that voted, because clearly if you don't own this or that amount of property, then your opinion doesn't matter. Ha ha ha. Fucking hashtag real life issues right there. Anyway, basically Chen was one of the politicians that emerged during that period, because he was already well known within the sort of area of society as a as a lawyer, I think. A lawyer. All right, recreate the Guofengjun. Should probably go for, one military factory for the aircraft repair factory. Liangguang Aviation Bureau. Unfortunately, that does not give us any planes, which is a bit of an issue. Yeah, this would be one of the following. Okay, so we can get both of them. Lessons for land doctrines, permanent engineering corps. Fuguo coal mine. Do we have? Yes. So far we have the resources that are required. Although getting the new industrial zones sounds pretty useful. Education reform. These things are... Ooh, political power gain. Why did I not take this before? Yes, county self-governance. Thank you so much. Then perhaps the Republican United Front. Enlightened gentry dominance, agricultural nastiness. Yeah, I think we want to get land to the tiller. Anyway, so basically he was, before the dynasty had already collapsed, the leader of the Canton, or Guangdong, Provincial Assembly. Which basically were these sort of legislative bodies that were set up for each of the provinces to allow the local elites some measure of political representation within the sort of slowly arising constitutional order. Like in the waning days of the Qing, they actually became a constitutional monarchy. And it didn't really last all that long because the monarchy itself collapsed later, so yeah. And basically Chen had already made progress through this lawful, quote-unquote, avenue to power. Although when the Qing collapsed, basically he became just one of the many sort of provincial leaders. Now, this actually sort of ties into a debate among a lot of historians as to whether or not the term warlord is correct. Like, for example, Chen Jiuming, sure, basically, like, operated in the same way as everyone else, you know, keeping his own power by military force, but that was basically what also the KMT was doing, because it was the only way to maintain power in the sort of situation China was in at the time, through military force and through sort of at least using it as a deterrent to others. But he was quote-unquote an elected official anyway. So if we're calling Chen Jiuming a warlord, then the definition of warlord is very, very expanded, then it's wrong. And so some people prefer the term provincial militarist because it is like quote-unquote less derogatory in a way, because warlord is obviously derogatory, and you know, it implies a sort of certain amount of or at least a dominant amount of self-interest, while some people argue that, like, for example, Chen Jiuming and a few other warlords are examples of somehow not being all that self-interested in their governance, although, it's a really weird thing. Anyway, Kumo Khanate has risen, of course, and they're apparently doing quite well against Mr. Jin Shuzhen. Anyway, should we take the Republican United Front? I don't think yet. I don't think we should take that yet. I think we should take the Southern Doctrine Mobility. Although, to be fair, the economy sounds pretty useful. So yeah, that's basically the whole situation, really, of Guangdong. Is there anything else spicy in the... Because I don't really want to cut this video in any way, so... Because I'm lazy and don't really have all that much time these days. So I only cut when it's absolutely necessary, not at the beginning of these playthroughs. I don't really want to get involved with that. So basically, which pulled over in 1922 when Chen revolted against Sun. That's true in real life. Chen would be forced to surrender and flee after Sun's ships indiscriminately bombarded Guangzhou. The KMT Central Committee never forgave Chen's betrayal, ensuring severe tensions between the two most prominent Republican movements in China. Chen Jiuming returned to Guangdong after the failure of the Northern Expedition, which he had predicted, and was quickly asked to become the governor of the province once more. Okay. Alright. Chen has been able to put his ideals into practice. He's one of the few genuine believers of democracy and federalism, and that successfully implementing them in his model province will lead the rest of China following suit, seeing the clear benefits of self-rule and generating democracy. Now, it's worth pointing out that in real life, the whole federalist shtick really fell in popularity after the Northern Expedition in 1925 succeeded. Lu Zhongting dies. So the military governor of Guangxi and head of the clique since the Xinhai Revolution in 1911, Lu Zhongting peacefully passed away at the age of 77, leaving his adopted sons Lu Yuguang and Ma Ji as civilian and military governors of the province. So Ma Ji is actually one of our field marshals, this guy over here. Governor Lu had been a living symbol of the revolution, the Republican movement, and the warlord era in general. In fact, even before, like, for example, Zhang Zongchang became really famous, Lu Zhongting was sort of mentioned as like the quintessential warlord guy. Despite his early rivalry with Chen Jiuming over the control of Guangdong, the two began cooperating after the Qing Restoration, ensuring that the Republican and anti-Qing ideals would survive. While his rule was disputed by Li Zongren, in exile in Yunnan, Lu kept Guangxi relatively stable and maintained its regional identity. With Ma Ji securing control of the Guangxi clique, cooperation with the two cliques of Liangguang now appears tenuous as ambitious new warlord plots to increase his power, in southern China. Gets the event Li Zongren invades. Okay, so we need to explain this. Basically, it's talking about two different Guangxi cliques. There's two Guangxi cliques. There's the old one and the new one, which sort of gets involved into the generational difference between the warlords that we know. Like, obviously the warlord period proper is like from 1916 to 1925, 25, 26, 27. But like the amount of time in which warlords are sort of prominent in Chinese politics really runs all the way up to 1937. Although, to be fair, it can be argued that the new Guangxi clique stays very, very relevant after that too, but, you know, not on a traditional basis. And there's what some historians sort of term a first-generation warlord, which came from the old Qing military, and sort of, or maybe like rises up from banditry, like Zhang Zuolin over here. And the second wave, or second generation, which are more like Li Zongren, that we are not able to see right now. I'm not even sure if any like real second generation type warlords are around over here. Some Ma's can be considered that, but definitely not Ma Lin. Yeah, not yet. Wu Peifu is kind of a weird figure, so he doesn't really count. Right, here we have... Oh, actually, he's without, like... He fucking restored Qing control over Shandong clique, but the Qing are dead. Anyway, basically an example of that would be Li Zongren, but also, in some ways, Yan Xishan, even though Yan Xishan had been around since the first warlord period. Basically, these second-generation warlords were much more prone to align themselves to political factions, such as the KMT, and utilize their ideology, along with regionalism and military control. This was also partially because a lot of them were educated overseas, or at very, very heavily sort of westernized military institutions, like the Baoding Military Academy. Of course, most of them that were educated overseas would be educated either in France or in Japan. And so they also brought these sort of Western ideas in through that medium, through education. Anyway, Baise, a city with which controls the mountain pass connecting Guangxi with Yunnan and Vietnam, was attacked by Li Zongren, a right-wing general of the KMT, quickly overwhelming the local defenses. Our scouts report that the warlord has split his forces, preparing... Oh, Jesus Christ. Preparing... wait, the officers... Again? Lu Chao, Liu Bo Chong, and Xiong Kewu. Our events firing twice. I'm gonna pick that just so that it doesn't do anything weird. Like if not picking them also has a hidden consequence, we're gonna do that, and we're gonna get the political power back because we already have the guys. Anyway, a Scots reported the warlord to split his forces, part of it preparing to go down the Pearl River to Canton, to attack Nanning, which then later leads down to Canton. Basically, the Pearl River is this thing, which then sort of emits itself into the Pacific Ocean, passing by Guangzhou, which is also why this area is called the Pearl River Delta. So, yeah, that's a pretty important little geographical feature. Another heading to Wuzhou to cut off the Guangxi forces. Li, taking advantage of Lu Zhongting's recent passing, clearly hopes to dislodge the current Guangxi clique and take the province for himself once and for all in the name of the Guangdong. Ma Ji wants to attack Li and Baise before he has a chance to consolidate to move to Nanning, while Lu Yuguang wants to head north and keep Nanning from getting encircled. However, Lin Hu, one of our officers, suggests we instead fortify Nanning, claiming that our Guangdong ally won't allow Wuzhou to fall, and that Li should be forced to dislodge them. So wait, now I'm on the perspective of the Guangxi clique. Anyway, take the fight to Li, defend Wuzhou, we cannot be encircled, or let them come to us. Probably taking the fight to Li is not a good idea. Let's say let them come to us. Because probably fighting Wuzhou we cannot, defending Wuzhou we cannot allow to be encircled, probably sort of hands this whole area over to Li Zongren. Anyway, mass assault. Yes. Because we're about to have some fighting. In case you haven't noticed, we have lost our Guangxi divisions. Ooh, Wuzhou falls. Li Zongren approaches. News has reached Nanning that Wuzhou fell to a small task force under one of Li Zongren's subordinates, while Li himself is marching down towards Nanning. While Liu Yuguang and others are critical of our inaction and are nervous about being cut off from Guangdong, Ma Ji believes that their opportunity to attack is long gone, and that they must further fortify the city. He also believes that Li has no choice but to attack as soon as possible or risk intervention from Guangdong, while Liu counters that Guangdong will not act unless the road to Nanning is open. Okay, so either send a small force to Wuzhou or dig in. Let's dig in. Now, I have never played this, so I have no idea what I'm doing. And as you can see, like, oh, the Battle of Nanning. Ma Ji was proven right, as Li Zongren's assault on the capital of Guangxi commenced almost as soon as he arrived. Facing the full force of the Guangxi clique, he was unable to dislodge them from their fortified position and suffered heavy losses. Okay, so we were right. When it was clear to Li that the clique had not fallen for his diversion and that he faced a disadvantageous situation, he retreated. And Ma Ji now has the chance to destroy Li's threat once and for all. However, with a portion of Li's force heading to Wuzhou as well, more cautious officers advised that they could regroup and cause trouble as bandits later, suggesting that we ask help from Guangdong to mop up Li's forces in and around Wuzhou. Let's pursue Li on our own and see what happens. Man, there's a lot of bad shit that could happen here. Li Zongren defeated. With Guangxi forces pursuing him, Li Zongren's retreat has become more and more disorganized and turned into a rout. The invaders' own whereabouts are currently unknown, but what is certain is that he is no longer a threat to Guangxi and that the clique's rule is once again secured. Now, this is something that happened quite a lot, especially in the southwestern China area. Like, a lot of defeated warlords would just sort of hide in a neighboring clique, try to gather up, like, you know, a band of, you know, old loyalists, mercenaries, and whatever you want, and sort of make the big comeback. Yeah, there we go, Lu Zhongting's funeral, a show of unity. And try to sort of come back with allies to redefeat their former enemies. So in this case, Mr. Li Zongren kind of failed in that, but I guess if you want to play as Li Zongren, don't take the same decisions that I did. Because if you manage to let Li Zongren win in Guangxi, then he spawns a revolt because Guangdong has to intervene. And so at that point you can play as Li Zongren. Anyway, I think I'm out of time for today. So yeah, thank y'all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you soon. And, well, hopefully, next time, we're gonna see some actual real Guangxi action, because Ma Ji, even though he is our buddy-buddy, may not be the greatest buddy-buddy-buddy of all time soon, guarding the body. Oh, what the fuck? What the fuck is happening? Okay, well, that's gonna be for next time.